The morning rush was just beginning when Emma wiped her hands on her apron and glanced at the door of the small roadside diner. It was drizzling outside, the kind of quiet rain that painted the world gray. Through the glass, she saw her again, the same frail woman who came every morning at 7:15 sharp. Her clothes were always worn out, her steps slow, but her eyes carried something deep, loneliness wrapped in grace. The old woman's hands trembled as she pushed open the diner door, and before anyone could react, Emma hurried forward, catching her by the arm to steady her. Little did Emma know this simple act of kindness was about to change her life forever. Sparkles, if you believe in kindness, compassion, and second chances, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone you care about, and subscribe for more heart-touching stories that remind us what humanity truly means. Emma worked double shifts most days. Her dream of becoming a nurse had long been buried beneath bills, rent, and her younger brother's school fees. She had learned to live with exhaustion. Her hands always saw, her eyes tired but hopeful. Every morning, the same woman would come in, order the cheapest coffee on the menu, and sit quietly by the window. She never complained, never spoke much, but always smiled when Emma served her. There was something about her smile that warmed the whole diner. It wasn't bright, it was gentle, fragile, like sunlight slipping through fog. Over time, Emma began noticing small details. The woman's shoes were nearly falling apart, her fingers always rubbed together as if from cold, and her coat, though carefully brushed, had patches of wear and tear. Emma started adding a small muffin or slice of toast to her coffee, pretending it was part of a morning special. When the woman tried to refuse, Emma would laugh it off, saying it was on the house. Eventually, the woman stopped arguing and accepted it with tears glistening in her eyes. Days turned into weeks, and they built an unspoken bond. Emma would ask how she was doing, and the woman would answer in short, humble phrases. Her name was Margaret. She had no family nearby, and she lived alone in a small rented room a few blocks away. Emma often noticed how Margaret's eyes wandered when families came in, how she watched mothers with their children, couples sharing breakfast, people laughing together. Emma knew that feeling too well, the ache of loneliness, the longing for warmth when you had none. Then one morning, Margaret didn't come. Emma kept glancing at the door, her chest tightening with worry. Another day passed, then another. She even went as far as to ask around in the neighborhood, but no one seemed to know much about her. Emma's heart sank. She had lost enough people in life to know the sting of absence. But on the fourth day, just as Emma began cleaning tables after the rush hour, the door opened and there she was. Margaret looked weaker than ever, her breathing shallow, her hands shaking violently as she held the door frame for support. Emma rushed to her, guiding her to her favorite corner table. She poured her coffee, added extra sugar, and quietly placed a warm bowl of soup beside it, refusing to charge her a dime. Margaret looked at her with tears spilling down her cheeks, whispering something soft Emma couldn't quite hear. She just smiled and squeezed her hand. Over the next few weeks, Emma began checking on Margaret even outside work hours. She'd bring her groceries, drop by to see if she was eating enough, sometimes sit beside her tiny window while they talked about life. Margaret spoke little about her past but often said, "You remind me of my daughter." Emma never asked more, she just listened. She felt like, in some strange way, fate had placed them in each other's lives at the right time. One particularly cold morning, Emma arrived at the diner early to open up, only to find Margaret already waiting outside. But something was different. She looked fragile, as if the wind could carry her away. Emma helped her inside, sat her down, and wrapped her hands around a cup of steaming tea. Margaret smiled weakly and said, "I don't know how much longer I'll be around, dear, but I want you to know you've been the only person who's shown me true kindness in years." Her words cut through Emmer like a blade of sorrow. Emmer held her hand tightly, promising she'd always be there for her. That was the last time Margaret came to the diner. 2 weeks passed with no sign of her. Emmer felt restless, checking the streets near Margaret's boarding house whenever she could, but no one had seen her. One rainy afternoon, while Emmer was taking a short break, the sound of several black cars stopping outside made everyone in the diner freeze. The doors opened, and 4 tall men in dark suits stepped out, their presence commanding attention. They scanned the room before one of them spoke in a firm, low tone, asking for Miss Emmer Thompson. The entire diner went silent. Emmer's heart raced as she raised her hand slightly, confused and terrified. The men nodded, then stepped aside, and that's when Emmer saw them. 2 women in elegant business suits entered, carrying thick folders and briefcases. Behind them was a man who looked like a lawyer, followed by a 4th bodyguard who closed the door behind him. The room fell into an eerie silence. Everyone's eyes turned to Emmer as the woman in front, calm and professional, asked if they could speak privately. Emmer, trembling and pale, led them to a corner booth. The lead lawyer placed an envelope on the table and said softly, "This is regarding Mrs. Margaret Whitmore." The name hit Emmer like thunder. She hadn't even known Margaret's last name. The woman continued, "Mrs. Whitmore passed away peacefully 3 days ago, but before she did, she gave us very specific instructions." Emmer's eyes filled instantly. She could barely breathe. "She wanted us to find you," the lawyer continued, "because you were her closest friend in her final months." As Emmer tried to process the words, the lawyer opened the folder and slid a set of papers toward her. "Margaret Whitmore wasn't who you thought she was. She was the founder and majority owner of Whitmore Industries, the multinational company headquartered downtown. She lived simply these past few years after losing her husband and only daughter. She wanted to experience life as an ordinary person again. She didn't want people to see her for her wealth but for her humanity." Emmer sat frozen, staring at the papers, her mind spinning. Margaret, a billionaire, the kind woman with worn-out shoes and trembling hands, the one who cried over a free muffin. The lawyer continued, explaining that Margaret had written a final letter for her. Emmer opened it with trembling hands. The words were written in shaky but elegant handwriting. "My dear Emmer, you treated me like a person when everyone else saw a burden. You gave me warmth when I had nothing left. I wanted to know if kindness still existed in this world, and you showed me that it does. You reminded me of my daughter, who passed away years ago. You gave me hope again. That's why I've made arrangements for you to continue what you always dreamed of, to care for others. Use this gift well, and never stop being the kind soul you are." At the bottom of the letter was Margaret's signature and a postscript that said, "You'll understand soon." The lawyer then revealed that Margaret had left Emmer not only her cozy cottage and savings, but also a substantial trust fund dedicated to opening a community clinic in her name. Emmer broke down, tears streaming down her face as everyone in the diner watched silently. Her co-workers, the customers, even the cook came forward, each touched by what they'd witnessed. Emmer couldn't speak. She could only clutch the letter to her chest, overwhelmed by love and grief. In the weeks that followed, news of Margaret Whitmore's will spread across the city. The story of the kind waitress who unknowingly befriended a hidden billionaire became a local legend. But for Emmer, it was never about the inheritance. She used the money to build something that truly mattered: a small free clinic and cafe in the same neighborhood where she'd met Margaret. The sign above the door read Margaret's Place, where kindness lives. Every morning, Emmer opened the cafe, pouring coffee for anyone who needed warmth. Sometimes she'd glance at the corner table by the window, the same one where Margaret used to sit, and she could almost see her there, smiling softly, sipping her coffee like old times. As time passed, people began coming not just for food but for hope. Homeless men, tired mothers, lost souls all found comfort there. And Emmer never turned anyone away. She always said, kindness doesn't need a reason, it just needs a heart willing to give. Sparkles, if this story touched your heart or reminded you of the power of small kindness, please like this video, share it with your loved ones, and subscribe for more real and emotional stories that remind us what really matters. Speech balloon special request: before you go, drop a comment below with the words "kindness lives on" to honor the memory of Margaret and everyone who changes the world through compassion. Emmer's story reminds us that sometimes the smallest act, a cup of coffee, a smile, a moment of care, can ripple through lives in ways we never imagine. We never truly know who we're helping or how much it means. So keep being kind, even when no one's watching. Because one day, like Emmer, you might discover that the person you helped changed your life forever.